Okay. And yeah, get the no.
Listen.
I'm scared. Actually, it's not that bad, honestly.
Two? Yes, 1, 2, 1, 2. Oh, okay, awesome. I think we got this. Huge thanks for everybody's patience. Thanks so much for coming to this panel discussion on art, labor, resistance, culture, video games. It does seem like I could have, a whole hour just on one of those topics with one of the speakers, But like, we have an amazing panel here today, and we'll touch on all things on what makes video games, a really sophisticated cultural medium, but also the barriers to it, the challenges to it, and how, what are the ways that the industry is actually not quite helping us. So I am delighted to be sharing the stage with incredible international game professionals and curators in the field. So Simona, on the far left there, is an Italian lead QA and game designer. She co-created Antifa Arts and Games and March Together movement. It's and creative feminist games. She also organized like anti-fascist game festivals and stuff like that. Super cool. And she also surfs, skates, paints, and draws. Further to the right, we have Kat from Canada, living in rural Nova Scotia. And she creates art games exploring how technology blurs work and play boundaries. Her work has been exhibited internationally in Rhizome New Museum, Photo Museum, Winter Tour, and Singapore Art Museum. She's also the executive director at Center for Art TPS in Halifax, developing programs for interactive media artists. And yeah, she really brings this sort of curatorial institutional perspective on creating infrastructure for art, games, and activist work. Sithe comes to us joins us all the way from South Africa. She's a Zambian producer at Niacom and working in Johannesburg, and currently just finishing up a game Reluted. Sithe is active in African game development since 2013, and she's been organizing community events in Lusaka, contributed to Global Games Jam, Humble's Black Game Developer Fund, Black Voices in Gaming, and Pro Helvetia's She Got Game Initiative. So again, oh my God, there's just so many cool things going on. Last but not least, we have Oriana here joining us from Cordoba in Spain. She's got 10 years as experience as a game designer in free-to-play industry. However, her contributions for this particular discussion will focus around the incredible indie series game that she made that is called 24 Hours, The Hopes Machine. It's been co-created with the Spanish Association Against Meningitis to raise awareness about this disease. Oriana was affected by meningitis 8 years ago, resulting in irreversible low vision. So she brings perspectives on this sort of development of games that can raise awareness and education on this theme. I feel like, I could just have like hours long conversations with every single one of you. My name is Marijam. I'm a Copenhagen-based writer, and I just released a book a year ago on video games and politics and culture called Everything to Play For: How Video Games Are Changing the World. It's available in Spanish as well, so please check. There are a couple of shops in Barcelona, and for the past 10 years, I spent time just sort of in that intersection between video games, politics, unionization, art, and culture in a variety of mediums. So yeah, I feel like this is quite a power panel. But okay, to start our conversation, I wanted to start with like a little icebreaker question. What is the game what is the first game you ever played and you realized that games are way more than just an entertainment, that is an art, and it can have political implications as well? What was that first moment? I'll start with you, Oriana.
Well, for me, in general, games has always been art, but specifically about politics and how the value that the game has. I remember Paper, Please create a lot of impression on me.
Nice, thanks. Good choice. Sithe.
Did Oriana say Papers, Please?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did I take it out from you?
I was thinking of the first one. I couldn't think of anything from way back, but Papers, Please definitely is what comes to mind when I think of a game that made me realize games can be much more than just fun, but even beyond art, being political. I think Papers, Please really exemplified that for me.
Thank you.
For me, it was back in 2016. I was in Chicago at the BitBash Arcade, and I saw Joseph DeLapp and our dear Gaia member Melas Abbas Killbox, and I was just floored. I thought it was just the most amazing, both the installation and everything behind it was just incredible.
That's awesome. Thanks. And Simona, for you?
For me, the first game that made me think about games and politics could, go together was a non-political game, Mafia, which was out in 2002 because the reaction was very political. I mean, in Italy, we had some politicians who wanted to ban the game. So it made me think that also a game can be political even if it doesn't political content, just for the reactions that can emerge from this game. So Mafia wasn't political, but the name is very political. So.
Totally. Oh, I could nerd out with you about Mafia for a long time. I love it as well. Thank you so much. If I can ask some people a little bit, I can't really hear them as well as I'd like to, but we'll see if you can sort that out at all. All right, well, let's dive into it. My first question, I guess we'll focus on the fact that, we all believe and we know that video games are art, of course, and we all think they have unique properties that can really enact persuasion. More than just being the largest cultural strand there is possibly an increasing space where people are engaging with themselves through the, this is the most common place where people are engaging in art and culture is through video games. But what are the reasons, in your view, that games still struggle so much to convince much of the cultural elites of our importance, both for funding and for the cultural capital that comes with it? Slots on state TV, cultural spaces, etc. Is the overall games industry helping us or perhaps hindering us in this process? And how would this type of recognition enrich your practice? I suppose, yeah, a big question, but to put it kind of simply, it just seems like we are begging at all times to be recognized, but not, we're still struggling. So what could be ways to overcome it? Kat, I'll start with you, because I feel like you're very much close to precisely to like elite arts institutions and so on. So how has it been?
Yeah, I found specifically so many challenges over 10 years, like creating work in art games. It all good? It's all good? Keep going? Okay. I think specifically, like in Canada, we're really privileged to have a quite robust art granting system, which means that artists can receive funding, like funding not a loan that you can then use to create projects. And games are one of the media that they support. However, you're sort of combined against other types of media art, including film and video, which has a much longer history. And the way that these councils give the funding is that there's peer assessment, which is amazing because it means that people who are actually working in that media come to award practicing artists. However, I still think that the groups of art game practitioners in Canada is fairly small and fairly based in very big urban centers. So while you might be receiving while you might be applicable for funding, there's still a limited number of adjudicators or peer assessors that could actually award it. So I find myself often on panels being there, or juries being there as the only person to speak to games and trying to convince a filmmaker that who really doesn't have that context that this is something that's very worthwhile. And I think that is holding us back just in the types of very much creative, very much non-commercial work that could be done in the media. And personally, yeah, it's something that I'm really interested in trying to talk about more. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And Sithe, how is the situation in South Africa? Are you feeling like you're, bumping into barriers, I suppose, when it comes to cultural institutions taking games seriously?
So when I was thinking about this, I was thinking not particularly in South Africa, but more of a problem I see across the continent. Working with people in games, it's very much an emerging industry in most countries in Africa. South Africa, many would consider is further ahead than a lot of places on the continent. And something which I think I see a lot of, not even in South Africa actually, is the conflation of so many separate industries under the one umbrella of gaming, when the economic or even just the benefits in general are very different if you're looking at different sectors. So we love to tell the story of how games is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and like it's making more money than films, films and music combined. Like, people love telling that story and love talking about the potential of games and how there's so many youth in Africa and how we can make so much money from games. But then they will under that umbrella, they will turn to something like esports and consider it as part of that. But when you look at how the value chain works for someone in esports from a developing country, it's more extractive than it is, like participating in it is more extractive in the long run, and it's very easy to be cut off from that industry and not create anything substantial that will actually grow your local community. So, for example, recently in Kenya, I think the Twitch affiliate program, I think they just stopped it in Kenya, and there were actually Kenyan streamers. So on the ground, people do promote the esports and mobile games and console games and indie games and educational games and games for change. Everything is under the same umbrella, art games. So that, I think, hurts us particularly. And it does happen in South Africa to some extent. So having separate niches and understanding the value chains and how it actually affects your local industry and is something that I think we should do more of. Yeah.
Absolutely, and just so the audience knows, we are actually taking these conversations and we're talking about them much deeper. So the four of us, we were going. Oriana wasn't part of it. We're part of Game Arts International Assembly, which meets every 2 years and thinks about game curatorship and arts is game very, very seriously. So I want to reassure the audience that there are these international connections that are attempting to make a change. But so Oriana, in your experience, I mean, it seems like you have succeeded to work with actual, with institutions that will help you in getting games, serious game funded. Have you felt more of an invitation with that, or is it still a struggle?
Well, the case of my project, the one that is for aware about meningitis, is also very personal, right? It comes that I am a designer, I'm also an artist, and I'm an indie developer. So founding this was very easy because it was very cheap. I think if I need to find fundings for a project that is not so personal and that I am not willing to do freely, let's say, it's harder. But what I am struggling now is more with the distribution. I think it was very interesting, this umbrella topic, because it's hitting me somehow, right? So I agree, and I think most of us agree that video game is art and also is very good medium for create experience and provide values and information in a way that people even have it better than just reading a book, right? Because they somehow interact with this. The problem is that the perception of the game is not the best, right? People believe that create violence, or now, as happened with the art, it is a product. So you think that a success of a video game is more about the value that the economical value that it provides, and that's an issue now when I try to distribute a game that has a purpose, because the purpose is no money. And specifically in my case, the game tried to be more educational and have a value and a message and so on. And when I go specifically to the educators, which is probably the good environment to move this, educator has this perception of game that the people stay in the screen too often, and they are providing another excuse to be in a screen, and maybe it is also engaging and somehow related with addiction. So there are some stigmas that comes from the same umbrella, because in some cases it's true, and in a lot of others are not, that I need to somehow break when I try to develop, not to develop this game, because my personal is, but I think also for developing is also something similar, but for spreading the game.
Absolutely. And I mean, still, I think sort of the last decade, there's just been so much positive news in the space. And Simona, I think for you in particular, like your practice is so like outside of the industry and against the industry in many ways, you know, like anti-fascist games to me that like kind of calls out so much of what, you know, the industry sadly has been doing with militarization and, you know, and all kind of ways that they divide us. So how's been your experience to really say to hell with any industry support, really? I'll go completely against it. You know?
Well, I've always heard people saying that video games can be are art because they should be considered like cinema, books, music. But in my opinion, this is the main problem because video games are not that kind of art. Are art, but not in that sense. I mean, this is the main problem because there is another layer when we talk about video games. There is the layer of interactivity. So we should start considering when we want the video game being recognized as art, we need to consider interactivity as another tool for art to convey its messages. And this means that the player is part of the opera. Okay, the player is part of the art. Is not sometimes is also can be also considered as a co-creator, co-author, and authorship is really important when it comes to art. But overall, I think that the player is a part of the art itself. So when it comes to video games and art, we should consider not only the authorship and then also consider the important role of the player, but also the creative process that's behind the game. Because we need to differentiate art, a game that is art, from a game that is artistic. It can be poetic. It can have some artistic elements, but maybe it's not art because you cannot recognize its author. You don't have access to understand what is the creative process behind and why the authors or the developers made some specific choices in developing. So this is very important when it comes to recognize the video game as art. I created a playable manifesto on my itch.io page. Is called Almost Equal because we're so used to say that video games are arts in a traditional way, but I think that if we keep continuing talking on video games like that, it's better to say that they are almost art because they are different. So the manifesto is playable because the interaction for video games is crucial. Without interaction, there's no art. There is a completely different thing. So this is my opinion.
No, I think you're scratching all of my sort of my itches usually when I think about this theme, precisely because you know, I think that we spend decades now, and I think we're all tired of this whole like celebration, you know, of yes, of course, games are meant to be and seen as art, but I mean, there is a reason why there's a ceiling to it, right? There is a reason why we keep on trying, and we are at galleries, and it all seems kind of fine, but it isn't. And I think for me, at the core of it all, my final boss is sort of is you know, is the mode of production or whatever. But here, I suppose. And again, you know, we could come here and you know, here I have 4 amazing practitioners of artistic, you know, games as art and curators, and so we can talk about the, you know, all the celebrations part of it. But it is important for us to establish, precisely the struggles as to what is that kind of next step. What is it that. And I personally think there's a lot of industry hindering sort of for us to achieve our best goals. So let's get into, like, I guess, the core of the discussion, you know, and I guess we are talking about labor as well in this discussion. And as you said, precisely, you know, what is the labor not alone of the maker, but even the player. The player is also a laborer. So what are the ceilings of ethics in utilizing games for art? I personally fear that we don't give enough attention to the fact that our brushes, canvases, our clay to mold the sculptures is covered in blood, sweat, and tears of the populations in the global south, let's say, working either minerals or, Foxconn factories in China where, our devices are assembled. And other cultural forms suffer from that less. So do you see this fact as a consideration in your art? And if yes, is there a way for us, politically aware game artists and curators, to mobilize against the current mode of production? I suppose, yeah, I feel like at the core of it all, that's usually why we struggle to answer some things. Where there's that whole side, with the multi-billion-dollar industry, and we are almost sometimes washing its name. I don't know. Sithe, have you had considerations around this?
But I think about this outside of games as well, because when living in the global south, for example, in Zambia right now, we're kind of in the middle of an ongoing drought, a drought that's been happening for a long time. We've had issues with electricity for many years because our main source of power is hydroelectric power. And of course, climate change has a lot of people who aren't even contributors to, or they aren't massive contributors to these problems, feeling huge repercussions. Like at the worst, I think people are only having power for like 1 or 2 hours a day sometimes. And so I'm thinking, a lot of times people talk about how they can't do anything about it from that position because they're really fighting for survival where they are. And sometimes they'll be forced into exploitative systems that make them contribute back to the same thing. And when I was thinking about it in the context of game development, I found it hard to what's this? I found it hard to envision what game developers who are still in emerging industries can do. And I'm not saying that there isn't something they can do, but it's really hard from their perspective, because even when you look at people who are able to actually get funding for games in the continent, there are not a lot of people who can make large projects. So when you do get opportunities to make a project, you might not be able to consider like how this is going to affect you in the long run, or unfortunately, some people are put in dangerous practices in their game, like whether it's to the environment or whether it's to the players, like just things which have bad dark patterns, bad design patterns that aren't particularly to the benefit of the people. And a lot of places will not be able to actually have laws that can catch on to that and prevent people from taking part in sports betting, things like sports betting or crypto games that aren't really regulated in a lot of smaller countries. So you can't control how much people contribute to those problems. Yeah, so I don't really have an answer, but I just think of how deep that actually goes, even beyond games, that people get stuck in the cycle of contributing to something that is endangering them. Like, you're experiencing floods in your country, like maybe it's due to, like you using more non-renewable resources, and things which are degrading your environment. But what can you do about
No, absolutely.
that? Yeah.
Yes, I know that the way that my question was even put is that it sounds like it's kind of our personal responsibility sort of thing, and most definitely isn't. We need to break down the monopoly of basically 5 companies that own the whole of the games industry, I suppose. Yeah.
But I was hoping I could end it positively, but every time I try to go into that, I'm just like, I want us to get to a place there. So, but if at least we can get people thinking about that before they even get into the industry, and people are aware of what other people have learned from decades of being in this industry and what it actually does to their communities and what actually helps them grow. I'm hoping that people can get a head start in being more proactive about it.
No, absolutely, I agree. And please also, if others sort of like have views, like jump in and so on. You know, we all have mics and things. But I do think that generally we're like more celebratory of the alternative practices and so on, and we actually are having these conversations. So to me, I'm kind of more optimistic than not. I just want to like talk about it anyways. And Kat, yourself, like, have you had those considerations in your practice, or generally have like views?
Yeah, and not in my game work specifically. In other projects, like I've worked with solar power to offset kind of the cost of like machine learning and such. But in my games, I haven't explored it explicitly. There is, of course, like a lot of really exciting work that's been made, or is it in development in that field? Like, of course, Paolo Pedercini's like iPhone story, big favorite of mine. Also, then Kara Stone, who's another Canadian artist, her work with Cindy Paremba in creating sustainable art game residencies. And Kara Stone has her solar server project that runs out in Calgary, and to run currently, I think Known Mysteries is the project that's working off of that. And I love it because Calgary, well, Canada in some parts, gets like such little sun because of the winter. So, you know, you can't really play that game in most of the winter time.
That's fascinating. This is like a seasonal game, right?
Yeah, so it's time limited and quite beautiful or poetic in the way that then you can engage with it and really makes you think about it. And it's also, I think it is, and while that's maybe more so on the like the creator's creation of side, there's also, I think, a lot an individual side, but I think there's a lot like institutionally that can be done towards like repair and the maintenance of work. I know I have like my games on. For my mobile games, like I have them on iPhones that are in a closet that they don't connect to the internet because I need, you know, if now that Apple's removed them because I haven't updated the app in a long time, it'll like never play on its intended platform again if I connect it to an internet.
Well, so if you turn it on, it will automatically update or something?
Well, I turned that off, but yeah, so there's sort of ways that I've been going about that. But then, of course, if I lose, you know, the backup iPhones or whatever, then there's no way it would be able to be exhibited in its intended format. So it's kind of also an institutional problem for collections about how you maintain that, and is that like the hardware that these projects run on, and if we're going to have that process of collecting game art, like who are the people that are tasked with that, and what kind of knowledge and what kinds of systems are they buying into repair wise, like in order to maintain it over time. It's a question I'm dealing with at the gallery that I work for, is we have a lot of tech and we don't have a lot of place to keep it all, but if we want to show something, then it goes in the closet.
Yeah, I really want to archive a lot of these examples because I think, a lot of people are doing a lot of cool stuff. And Simona, have these considerations been part of, I guess your thinking broadly about, fascism and the way that the mode of production is imposed on us and so on? I don't know.
Well, my experience is very wide. Let's say my inspiration came probably from outside of video games, like art in general. Let's say that when I want to create something, specifically when I wanted to co-create Antifa art and games, it was a bit difficult to create something that people could be interested into, because the word games cannot be as interesting as arts, for example. So in that case, we wanted to be visible but also recognizable, and I think that it's very important to create something that is familiar, that doesn't scare people, but looks maybe traditional, but at the same time surprise them. With Antifa, I think we managed to reach this goal because people were interested they expect like a traditional showcase, but then they were surprised that we had anti-fascist games are reality. I mean, they were like, video games can be anti-fascist, right? Is it true? The same thing, the same inspiration. I use that for my game, Sea of Leaves, which is I describe that as a narrative game, but then its narrative is not very traditional. It's very fragmented and more similar to how my brain, my personal brain works. So I know that sometimes we need to use traditional words to approach people. So this is my strategy in general.
Thank you. And Oriana, I know that you've kind of seen in some ways like both sides of the industry, and for your ideal practices, how would you like to see that kind of relationship between industry problems and your future projects?
Well, somehow this kind of things also a bit out of control, right? I cannot know most of those morality reputation of the game, or how it affects the environment with, or in general the values. It's sometimes personal. You can distribute the message and so on by your own in your own projects, but at the end, this umbrella that we were speaking is what at the end the people have in mind, and especially now with the games as products, like it can be free to play. There are a lot of talkings about the bad patterns, for example, right? But at the end, bad patterns is what we allow. If bad patterns as a player, it works, and somehow you allow the bad patterns to work, it will be easier for us to create bad patterns. So I think it is not the power is not in the developer only, but also in the people that consume the video games in general. And I think that's very important, that we are aware about the power that we have as consumers.
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, so I can give a little cheeky advert that at 6 p.m. we are going to be talking about unionization of the games industry here in Barcelona, I think on the stage, so please do come to that. But that's industry professionals. Whereas I do think that, and I think in my largest dreams, like I want to see players like unionized, right? Like, and kind of ask for better conditions and less of those, of course, more extractivist ways of creating games and so on. So, we established some problems, of which there are many, and we could go into the details of it all. But like, I want to also ask and kind of end on asking, what are the support structures that you actually feel around you, and what are the whether groups, organizations, spaces, events that keep you going, that you feel is like at the forefront, or at the avant-garde of the best of the games industry, the best of games as art, the best of games as culture. So that kind of, since we have a little bit of time left, I would like for you to give a shout out to these amazing people that make your work possible. And what would you like to see strengthened to help the next wave of politically minded game makers to really thrive? Yeah, who are the kind of organizations or people in the work currently that you're aware of that are close to doing that work? Yeah, just give them a shout. I think it's important to also, not only just because, I love talking, I've, made a career of talking of the problems in the games industry, but it's very important to also talk about solutions. So yeah, where are your support systems? Oriana, do you want to start?
You mean for the support of one of the things that I really love in general of this industry is that there are people that, of course, do games alone, but it's a teamwork thing. And that also means that there are so many passionate people in the game industry that comes not only for business or for the idea of doing money, but for real doing something special, being special. Like, well, you have an example here, right? Each of us has a different idea of what a game is, how can be used. And that is not only about the creators, but also about the people that moves things. It's a medium. So I think there are a lot of spaces from creator that allow us to distribute the message. And I think that's very positive, the teamwork feeling that this have, and the purpose that we have of using this as a message, as a movement.
Absolutely, and I just sort of think the fact that in the last 15 years, there has been so much movement in the fact that your story can now be told, a video game about meningitis, like who could have thunk it, right? So again, I do think that timeline-wise, there are just more and more sophisticated conversations happening all the time, for sure. Sorry, but I keep on putting myself in. Sithe, do you want to give a shout out to people who, inspire you or support you, or organizations and so on?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of times it's international organizations, whether it's regionally or locally. My start in the industry was from home with our technology network back at home. But when I started moving out to see international communities like the South African games industry, you get different levels of support when you with different groups that you're connected with. So me working in South Africa, there are some regional benefits that even South Africans would understand that can help other people regionally work together better. And beyond that, working internationally, you have even larger systems that can help, for example, these events like BCN, for example, the Gaia, these larger networks, like they're really good catalysts for people who aren't able to make change happen as fast in their communities. Getting them to reach your community or your platform will allow things to happen much quicker for them. So I'm really grateful for being a part of larger communities that are allowing me to see the game development industry grow at a rate that I don't think it would have happened if I was isolated in my own little community or if everyone was just in their own little space. Yeah.
I think shout out to, I don't think if the Artist Run Center Trinity Square Video in Toronto hadn't given me like an access to an Oculus kit back in like 2015, I think, I probably wouldn't have been making games, just didn't have like the computer or the hardware access for that. So for me, in Canada, the artist run culture around games, places like, unfortunately they don't exist anymore, Bento Miso / like Gamma Space and Dames Making Games are really key in my development as like accessing this kind of technology. The communities as well still sticking around. Hand-Eye Society is still doing incredible work. These are kind of on the production and community side, and also less so on distribution, but exposing people through festivals or gathering spaces to run events to see these kinds of arty games. As well, I think on the more so on like the institutional or archival side, I think the work that like Marijam did with their Conifer archiving software for like Flash-based games was a really incredible way to preserve that type of artwork. Not even just like for the next generation, but just like we wanted, if people wanted to play it next year, like for a really immediate period of consumption. So yeah, things that arts organizations are doing to like really support like the longevity as well as like new entries into the field of art and games. I applaud them.
Yeah, I think that's very important, that precisely that access to hardware, that is so hard in so many places, that's really, really important. Thank you. And Simona, who do you want to give shout out to in terms of people who are enabling for you to do your best creative work,
Well, in my case, as I said before, my main inspiration come from attending artistic events, and also artistic spaces and political spaces. So I think that everything that fosters collaboration over profit, empathy over productivity is something that is precious and inspired me also to co-create and co-found the community of game developers in Bari. I took inspiration from that, and I'm very thankful to being like part of that kind of spaces, because in Italy we are not so good to create very strong communities, but I think that those values coming from different spaces can be very important to support this work.
Thank you. And the last question is sort of a cheeky one I had. Sort of, if you were made the global tsar of video games, but I guess I can also say just the global tsar of culture in video games, let's say, what are the top 1 to 3, maybe just priorities or policies that you like to enact in the field we all love, but fear for? Yeah, what could be like a just, now you have all of the power and like one or two things that you would make law essentially to help thrive, for video games to really help thrive as a cultural medium. So I'll go this way around now. Simona, do you want to start?
Well, in my case, I would like to see more experimental games and less AAA games. And also, I would like to see. I wouldn't like to see any more layoffs. I would like that the game industry would be a more safe place for workers. No expectation, no low wages. So yeah, it's easy, no?
Yeah. Like that.
I would like to see continue more expansion. Personally, like witnessing the degradation of some of these like artist-run spaces in the country I come from, really government support on sustaining these community spaces, because even though we're maybe playing these games online on our own computers, it's really important that we actually have like gathering spaces where this like community can share its values, because a lot of the that activism and the meaning behind the games are expressed through people either playing them together or just having conversations. So funding for spaces for art games.
I think it is the future in some ways, that kind of like real life spaces generally. So I think yours might be close to become law or somehow. Sithe, what are your thoughts here?
So I would say more incentives for people to acknowledge every person who has contributed to the creation of the game, because sometimes we don't get to see a lot of people who might be contributing to a game through outsourced labor. Like some people don't get to get in the credits of games which they contributed to for a lot of time. So I don't know how, but just more transparency on that and an incentive on that. Like, I don't know, like some fun prize for who has the most far-flung people in their game. I don't know.
No, but it's true. I come from Eastern Europe, and there's also like so many outsourced companies that the global West utilizes to outsource all the labor, the cheaper labor, and I imagine there's quite a lot of that kind of industry as well in African countries. And like, do we get credits? No, So I agree but again, that's a nice and doable one. I like that. I think that could definitely be law. And Oriana, for yourself, you're now the global czar of culture and video games. What's your first job?
Well, I think I agree with all of them. So that's the bad part of me, the last one answering, that I could say not there. But I would really like to see the more understanding of what a game is and put different spaces for a video game, because we already have a lot of, like we said at the beginning, right? There is this umbrella about what a video game is, that is somehow, one video game is so different from another that it's good that the people understand the spaces of the game. So I would like that they start to have these spaces like recognizable for everybody. I would really love to have more usage of the video game, not only as a product, but like a medium for, in my case, right, a serious game, for something social, for education, for art, even if we are not agree about the art. Let's talk later about that, the art state of the game. So I would really like that the exploration about video games keep exploring and we can get out of the stigma.
Couldn't agree more. I feel like we could be a nice committee of tsars, perhaps. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll use the chair privilege to also maybe answer this one. Of course, unionization and that. But in terms of government funding, we talked about a little bit in another session that I just love for the governments to fund studios, not necessarily according to a theme of the game, but like according to how they're made. So maybe like unionized games companies and so on. And then for all of those to then become federations and have international support amongst them and become much more kind of active in their demands, rather than right now it's still a bit on the defensive. So on that kind of like, but yeah, I feel like we're covering a lot of like here the how the games are made, and also and where the resources come from, and also just how much appreciation for them are. We'd be a good group of towers, I think. Well, listen, thank you so much. I feel like again, it's like impossible to squeeze any of these themes in such a little period of time, but I really suggest everybody really Googles people's practices and checks the incredible work that they do globally to make our industry yeah, more egalitarian, more culturally fascinating, more open to new kind of generations of people that really see our industry for the artistic pinnacle that it is. I don't know. Thank you, and I don't think we even have time for questions and answers. I saw a massive thing like this, but I'm sure you'll be able to catch us after the thing. Yes? Any parting words? Yeah, thanks. That's it. Thanks. Cheers.